Mark thought his family's nightmare was finally over. But when a hidden videotape surfaced during the show's final recording, it shattered everything they believed. The footage revealed a betrayal deeper than anyone imagined, and the truth forced Dr. Phill to stop the cameras mid-interview. What the tape showed would change not only the case, but the meaning of forgiveness itself. It was supposed to be the ending. The cameras were already preparing for the wrap-up. The audience had clapped, the family had cried, and Dr. Phill had delivered his closing line about moving forward. Then a producer hurried over, whispering something into his ear. Dr. Phill frowned. His tone changed. "Hold on," he said quietly. "We have one last thing to review." The room tensed. The big screen flickered to life, showing grainy black and white footage. A timestamp in the corner read March 17th, 2021, 11:43 p.m. At first, it looked ordinary, a living room camera, shadows moving across the frame. Then the door opened. A woman entered. Laura, the wife who had sworn she was somewhere else that night. The audience gasped. Mark, her husband, froze. His knuckles whitened around the arm of his chair. His daughter, Emily, covered her mouth. Dr. Phill leaned forward. Laura, are you aware of this footage? Laura's face drained of color. No, she stammered. That can't be real. But it was. The timestamp matched the night of the argument that tore their family apart. The same night, she claimed she was working an overnight shift. Mark's voice cracked. You told me you were at the clinic. You swore on our daughter's life. The silence that followed felt heavier than the air itself. Laura shook her head. I can explain. Dr. Phill signaled to pause the video. Before you do, he said, I need you to understand. This tape didn't come from us. It was sent anonymously. That sentence changed the entire atmosphere. An anonymous tape. Someone wanted this truth out. Mark turned to his wife, disbelief and pain mixing in his eyes. Why would anyone record our house, Laura? Who would even have access? She didn't answer. She just stared at the frozen image of herself on the screen, standing in their living room, her face half lit by the television glow. Dr. Phill broke the silence again. This could change the context of everything we've discussed today. I need you to tell me exactly where you were that night. Laura's voice dropped to a whisper. I was home. The audience murmured. Even the crew glanced at each other. Dr. Phill pressed gently. Then why did you tell your husband otherwise? Laura's hands trembled. Because if I told him the truth, he would have never forgiven me. Mark slammed his hand on the armrest. Forgive you for what? Laura didn't respond. Dr. Phill waited, but the tears came before the words. Because it wasn't about where I was, she said. It was about who I was with. The studio gasped again. Someone in the crowd whispered, Oh my God. Dr. Phil's tone softened but stayed firm. Laura, the only way this family moves forward is with honesty. So I'm asking, who was in that house with you? Her eyes darted toward the audience, then to her daughter, then back to Mark. If I tell you, she said slowly, it'll destroy what's left of us. Dr. Phill didn't flinch. Sometimes destruction is just what lies need to burn before truth can rebuild. Laura looked down. Then I guess it's time to burn. Mark sat frozen, his breathing ragged. The audience hung in silence, waiting for a confession that never came. Dr. Phill signaled to cut for a break, his face unreadable. Cameras panned out as Laura buried her face in her hands. Behind the scenes, the producers scrambled. Who had sent the tape? How would they get inside that home? And why now, after 3 years? One thing was certain. The truth they thought they'd found was just the surface. Because somewhere, behind that footage, lay a story nobody was ready to face. How do you forgive someone when every second of proof says you shouldn't? And more importantly, who else knew the truth all along? 3 years before the tape, before the tears and public breakdown, Mark and Laura looked like the perfect couple. To their neighbors in suburban Dallas, they were stability itself, clean lawn, friendly smiles, family cookouts on weekends. But perfection is often the most convincing disguise. It began with exhaustion, the kind of fatigue that settles into a marriage so quietly that neither person notices it until it's too late. Mark worked long shifts managing his brother's construction firm. Laura balanced nursing school with part-time work at a clinic. They barely saw each other except for the blur between good morning and good night. Then one spring evening, Mark came home to an empty house. The dinner was still warm. The lights were on, but Laura's car wasn't in the driveway. He called her phone. No answer. Midnight passed. Then 2. At 2:37 a.m., she finally texted, "Emergency shift. Slept at co-workers." Mark wanted to believe it. He told himself she was tired, overworked, selfless. The story fit the woman he knew, or thought he knew. But the next morning, a neighbor mentioned something strange. "I saw Laura's car last night," she said casually. "Thought you were having company." Company. The word stuck. Mark brushed it off, but the seed had been planted. He started noticing tiny things. The sudden password change on her phone, the perfume she never used before, the way she flinched when he mentioned their anniversary. One night, half drunk on suspicion, he asked, "Are you seeing someone?" Laura didn't yell. She didn't even cry. She just said, "You don't know how tired I am." Those 7 words cut deeper than any confession could have. For weeks, they lived in silence that sounded like thunder. Emily, only 14 then, felt it too. She'd stopped mid-sentence at dinner, realizing no one was listening. Then came the confession, or what Mark thought was one. Laura admitted to a mistake. Said it happened once. Said it meant nothing. She begged him to forgive her, to think of their daughter. Mark agreed, but not because he trusted her, because he didn't know who he was without her. They went to counseling, rebuilt routines, posed for family photos again, and for a while it worked. Laura smiled more. Emily laughed again. Mark pretended not to notice the hesitation in Laura's eyes when he reached for her hand. But the truth has its own clock, and no matter how hard you bury it, it keeps ticking, waiting for the right moment to explode. 3 years later, it did, on national television. When that tape rolled, Mark realized something horrifying. The night he forgave her wasn't the night she came clean. It was the night she learned how easy forgiveness could hide a lie. The same lie that had followed them into Dr. Phil's studio. The one that had just been caught on camera. But the worst part? Someone else had known about it long before the world ever saw that tape. Who was it? And why they stayed silent all these years? Sometimes the real betrayal doesn't come from a stranger. It comes from someone sitting at your own dinner table. After that episode aired, the internet exploded. Clips of Laura's stunned face, Mark's heartbreak, and Dr. Phil's silence flooded social media. But while viewers argued about who was right or wrong, something darker was happening behind the scenes. 2 days later, a small, unmarked envelope arrived at the Dr. Phil studio. No sender. No note. Just a USB drive. Inside the envelope were 5 words, typed on plain paper. "You missed the real story." Producers almost dismissed it until they played the file. Grainy footage again. The same living room, the same night as the first tape. But this time, the camera angle was different, closer, hidden behind a curtain. The voice on the recording whispered, "She doesn't know I'm filming this." The moment that voice hit the speakers, every producer in the control room froze. It wasn't Mark's voice. It wasn't Laura's either. It was higher, younger. They ran it through software to clean up the audio, and there it was, clear as day. The voice of a teenage girl, Emily. Dr. Phil's staff had seen a lot of family secrets, but this was different. A daughter recording her own mother in secret? That changed everything. The next morning, Dr. Phill asked his producer, "Does the family know about this second file?" They shook their heads. "Not yet. We thought you should see it first." The footage showed Laura pacing the room, crying. She wasn't talking to anyone, just whispering to herself, panicked. "He can't know, not now. It'll kill him." Then a faint reflection in the mirror showed Emily, phone in hand, filming quietly from the hallway. The screen cut to black. Dr. Phill leaned back, rubbing his forehead. "Bring them in," he said. All 3 of them. That afternoon, they were seated once more under the studio lights. Mark looked exhausted, Laura hollow, Emily shaking but defiant. Dr. Phill started carefully. "There's something we discovered since your last visit. I want to show you something, and I need you to be honest." The video rolled. As soon as Emily's voice came through the speakers, Laura gasped. "Emily, what is this?" Emily's voice cracked. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Mark's head snapped toward her. You? You filmed your mother. Tears spilled down Emily's face. I thought she was lying again. I had to know the truth. Laura stood up. You betrayed me. Emily fired back through sobs. You betrayed us first. Dr. Phill raised a hand, steady but firm. I need everyone to take a breath. Emily, why didn't you tell your father what you found? Emily wiped her eyes. Because I was scared. I didn't want to break him. I thought maybe if I showed her what I had, she'd finally tell him herself. Mark's voice trembled. So all this time, my own daughter knew something I didn't? The air thickened. The audience didn't move. Every second felt like standing in the center of a family imploding in real time. Dr. Phill looked from one to the other, his voice calm but cutting. You all think you've been protecting each other, but you've really just been protecting the lies. The truth landed like thunder. Laura sank back in her chair, whispering, "She's my daughter, and she turned me in." Dr. Phill leaned forward. Maybe she didn't turn you in, Laura. Maybe she saved you from living another day pretending. But even as the conversation softened, one more question hung in the air, the kind that keeps an audience glued to the screen. Who sent the tape? If Emily recorded it, she wasn't the one who mailed it. Someone else had it, and they wanted this family exposed. Dr. Phill ended the session early. Cameras cut, producers huddled. The mystery had widened, because the tape that destroyed a family had also awakened someone who wasn't done yet. And when the truth finally came out about who mailed it, it wouldn't just change the story. It would rewrite the definition of betrayal itself. Is exposing the truth still right if it destroys the people you love most? The studio was eerily quiet when they returned the next morning. No audience this time, just Dr. Phill, 3 chairs, and a truth that was about to detonate. Emily sat between her parents, hands clenched in her lap. She looked smaller than before, swallowed by guilt and fear. Dr. Phill leaned forward. His tone was steady but gentle. Emily, you've been very brave. But I need you to tell us, why did you record your mother that night? Her eyes flicked toward Laura, then to the floor. Because I was tired, she said softly. Tired of pretending everything was okay. She swallowed hard before continuing. Every night, I'd hear them fight behind closed doors. Mom saying, "You'll never understand." Dad saying, "Just tell me the truth." I was scared they'd split up. I thought if I caught Mom lying again, maybe it would force her to stop. Mark's voice cracked. So you filmed her to prove she was lying? Emily nodded, tears building. I didn't mean for it to go public. I just wanted you to finally see what I'd seen. Dr. Phil's voice softened. And what was that, Emily? Her answer came like a whisper, that she was hiding something but not from him. From herself. Laura's breath caught. Emily. Dr. Phill turned to Laura. Your daughter risked losing your trust to uncover the truth. What was she trying to find? Laura shook her head. I wasn't cheating. I swear. I didn't know how to tell anyone what I was doing that night. Mark's frustration boiled over. Then tell us now. What could be so bad you'd lie for 3 years? Laura's tears fell silently. Because it wasn't my secret to tell. The air tightened. Even the crew behind the glass stopped moving. Dr. Phill leaned in. Whose secret was it? Laura hesitated, her voice trembling. Your brother's. Mark blinked. David. Laura nodded. That night he called me. He was sick, scared, and begged me not to tell you. He said if you found out, it would kill your relationship forever. Emily frowned. Wait, Uncle David, what does he have to do with this? Laura looked down. Everything. Mark's jaw tightened. You expect me to believe this? Dr. Phill raised his hand gently. Before you respond, Mark, let's make sure we hear her out. This might be the first moment we're getting the real truth. Laura took a deep breath. David was in trouble. He made mistakes, big ones. He begged me not to say anything. I went to see him that night because he was falling apart. He told me things that broke my heart, and I swore I'd keep his secret until he passed. Emily looked between her parents. So, all those nights you said you were working late, Laura nodded. I was visiting him. I didn't want you or your father to know. Not until I figured out how to protect the family name. Dr. Phill studied her quietly. So, in your attempt to protect your family, you destroyed its trust. Laura nodded through tears. I thought I was saving us, but I just made everyone hate me. Mark's expression softened for the first time. His anger gave way to confusion and something close to grief. He was my brother, Laura. Why didn't you trust me to handle it? Laura's voice cracked. Because I saw how much you loved him. You looked up to him your whole life. I couldn't be the one to tell you he was stealing from you. The room fell into stunned silence. Emily's voice trembled. Stealing? From Dad. Laura nodded again, whispering, yes. From the business. From his savings. Everything. Dr. Phill leaned back, exhaling. That's a truth that changes everything. The weight of that revelation sank into the room like fog. For once, no one cried. They just sat in the stillness of understanding. Dr. Phill finally broke the silence. You all try to protect each other. In doing so, every one of you betrayed someone you love. But there's more here. Because, Emily, you said you wanted to help your dad. What you didn't know is that your tape wasn't the only one that existed. Emily looked up, startled. What do you mean? Dr. Phil's tone turned cautious. Another video surfaced, recorded days after yours. We'll talk about that next. Laura's eyes widened. Mark stiffened. Dr. Phil's voice dropped to a near whisper. And what's on that second tape might finally prove that no one here was lying, just broken. Can the truth heal a family that's already been burned by it? The studio was empty when Dr. Phill walked back in that morning. Just 3 chairs and one monitor waiting to play the final truth. He took a breath before the family entered, because what they were about to see would rewrite every word spoken so far. When Mark, Laura, and Emily sat down, the air was heavy. No audience, no lights, just truth. Dr. Phill spoke quietly. Another recording surfaced. It was taken a few days after the first one by someone else. None of you sent it, but I think it's time you saw what's on it. He nodded to the control room. The screen flickered to life. It showed Laura again. Same house, but this time she wasn't pacing. She was sitting beside a hospital bed. The camera zoomed out slightly, and there, frail and pale, was David, Mark's brother. Mark's eyes widened. That's the hospice. Laura's voice echoed through the speakers. You can't tell him, David. He deserves to remember you as his hero. David coughed weakly. No, he deserves the truth. I took money that wasn't mine. I was desperate. Promise me you'll tell him after I'm gone. Laura's voice broke. I can't do that to him. It'll destroy him. David shook his head. Lies destroy faster. The screen froze. Silence filled the room. Mark stared at the frozen image of his brother, eyes glistening. He confessed to you? You knew this all along. Laura wiped her face, trembling. He made me swear. He said if you found out before he died, you'd never forgive him. Dr. Phill leaned in softly. So you carry that secret, and took the blame instead. Laura nodded through tears. I thought I could handle being the villain. It felt easier than watching him die hated. Emily sat frozen, realizing everything she believed about her mother had been wrong. All this time, you weren't cheating. You were protecting him. Laura looked at her daughter, voice breaking. Protecting all of you. Mark covered his face with both hands. And I called you a liar on national television. Dr. Phil's tone deepened. That calm authority he's known for. Mark, what your wife did was wrong. But her choice came from love twisted by fear, not betrayal. Mark looked up, eyes wet. She could have trusted me. Laura's answer was almost a whisper. I didn't trust myself. Dr. Phill let that hang. Then he said something that cut through the silence. Secrets are like diseases. They don't die when the person does. They pass on to everyone who loves them. The weight of that truth hung in the air. Emily turned toward her father, voice shaking. So, everything I did, recording her, exposing her, it was all for nothing? Dr. Phill looked at her gently. Not for nothing. You brought the truth into the light. Sometimes, it takes the wrong action to lead to the right revelation. Mark turned to Laura, voice softening. Why didn't you tell me when he died? I spent years hating you. Laura's eyes filled again. Because after he was gone, the lie had become too big. I didn't know how to undo it without breaking you again. Dr. Phill nodded slowly. That's the paradox of secrets. They start as protection, but end as punishment. Mark reached for her hand, hesitant. She flinched, then let him hold it. I should have known, he whispered. You never once defended yourself. That's not guilt, that's sacrifice. For the first time, Laura met his eyes. I didn't want to lose you. Dr. Phill looked between them. You both already did. You just didn't realize it until now. He stood, signaling to cut the recording. Now the question isn't who's guilty, he said softly. It's whether this family can forgive what truth took to surface. Laura turned to Emily, voice barely audible. I'm sorry, baby. I should have told you everything. You shouldn't have had to become the adult in this house. Emily shook her head, tears falling. No, I am sorry. I thought you were the liar. But you were the one carrying everyone else's lies. Dr. Phill watched quietly as the three of them sat there, broken but finally honest. Then he said, It's strange, isn't it? How the truth hurts so much because it always shows up too late. The camera zoomed slowly on the family, hands intertwined, faces wet with both shame and relief. For the first time, there was no anger left, just silence, the kind that feels like an ending, but also a beginning. Is silence ever an act of love, or just another name for fear? Weeks after the second tape aired, the studio looked different. No crowd, no bright lights, just 3 chairs in a quiet circle. Dr. Phill sat across from Mark, Laura, and Emily, not as a host this time, but as a witness. He started softly. You've lived the last few weeks under the weight of a secret that spanned years. Today isn't about who lied. It's about what you do next. Laura nodded, eyes down. The once defensive woman now looked smaller, stripped of armor. I've spent years trying to hold this family together with lies, she said. Now I just want to hold them with truth, even if it's painful. Mark's voice cracked. I spent those same years judging you, thinking I was the only one protecting this family. I didn't realize I was protecting my pride. He turned to Emily. And I failed you. You shouldn't have had to prove who was right. Emily wiped her tears. You both taught me honesty matters, but you forgot to live it. I didn't want proof. I wanted peace. Dr. Phill leaned forward. That right there, that's the cost of secrecy. It doesn't just steal trust. It teaches the next generation to hide, too. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. A stillness earned only when the shouting stops and understanding begins. Laura reached out first. Her hand hovered, uncertain, then rested over Mark's. Emily added hers a moment later. 3 hands stacked, fragile, shaking, human. Dr. Phill smiled faintly. The truth doesn't erase pain. It reveals where the healing has to start. This is your chance to start again. Not as the family you were, but the one you might still become. Tears rolled freely now, but the air felt lighter. The anger had burned out, replaced by something gentler. Acceptance. Mark finally spoke. I can't promise I'll forget, but I can try to understand. Laura nodded. And I'll stop trying to protect people by lying to them. Emily whispered. Maybe the truth didn't ruin us. Maybe it finally made us real. Dr. Phill stood, his voice low and steady. People think closure means the story's over. But real closure is when the truth stops controlling you. He paused, then added, You've all spent years trapped by secrets. Now you know the truth. Don't spend another day trapped by guilt. As the session ended, the family hugged, not perfectly, not completely, but honestly. It wasn't the kind of embrace for TV. It was quiet, trembling, genuine. The cameras faded out before anyone spoke again. For once, this ending belonged only to them. Because sometimes healing doesn't come with applause, it comes with silence. And the lesson left behind was simple. Truth can break you, but it can also rebuild you if you let it. When the lies are gone, what's left to hold a family together? Only love brave enough to stay. If this story moved you, take a moment before you scroll. Think about the truths you've buried, the ones meant to protect someone, but that still haunt you. Honesty doesn't come easy, but it's the first step toward freedom. Share your thoughts below. Someone out there might need to hear that forgiveness, real forgiveness, still exists.